Are you ready?
Yes, I'm not certain why it says you are still in practice session. I've not seen that before, but we're definitely recording the meeting and we're definitely live on YouTube. So I believe we are ready.
Okay, we will call the meeting to order for May 9th, 2022. Roll call, Supervisor Lewis.
Present.
Supervisor Day.
Here.
Supervisor Ayers.
Here.
Supervisor Lyons.
Here.
And Supervisor McDaniels present as well. We will now have a prayer for the board followed by a pledge of allegiance. Those attending are not required to participate, but if you'd like to join us, please stand.
Dear Lord, guide us as best you can with the tough issues we have in front of us as always, and give us thoughtful minds. In your name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will hold citizen comments near the beginning of the meeting. We will do our best to take citizen comment remotely. There are two options for citizens to offer comment. To join by telephone, you may dial into one of the numbers listed on the county website. The webinar ID and password are there for your convenience. Citizens wishing to simply view the meeting live or after the fact can do so on the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors YouTube channel, also available on the county website. If you wish to make a citizen comment as a Zoom participant, you will use the raise your hand feature. You can press the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window or press *9 if you're calling in by telephone. Are there any changes to the agenda tonight? All right, hearing none, we have some recognitions and presentations. To start with, we have a proclamation honoring Robert Bobby Bergstresser. Supervisor Depp.
Proclamation in honor of memory of Robert Bobby J. Bergstresser. Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Rockbridge County and the citizens lost a dedicated public servant, entrepreneur, and savvy businessman in the passing of Robert J. Bergstresser on April the 14th, 2022. Whereas Robert Bergstresser was a graduate of math and mechanical engineering at Blue Ridge Community College, a graduate of Danville Community College with a degree in machine tool technology and machinist, and an apprentice at the Westinghouse School of Apprenticeship. Whereas Robert Bergstresser served the Board of Supervisors for Rockbridge County from 1996 to 2004 and as chairman from 1996 to 1998, and served the citizens of Rockbridge County on many boards, commissions, and committees during that time. Whereas Robert Bergstresser served in the Bank of Botetourt Board of Directors from 2010 to 2022, Board of Directors of the Rockbridge Area Leadership Scholarship Fund from 2002 until his passing, as a member of the board of the National Association of Truck Stop Operators and chairman from 2011 to 2012, a member of the board of directors of Stonewall Jackson Hospital. Whereas Robert Bergstresser was a selfless philanthropist who supported many causes within the county and the city of Lexington and Buena Vista, including sponsoring a house every 4 years for Rockbridge Area Habitat for Humanity, as a primary sponsor of the Rockbridge Area Health Center Bull and Oyster Festival, and a financial supporter of their capital improvement campaigns, along with many donations of Rockbridge YMCA, local fire rescue departments, numerous other nonprofit organizations, youth sports, and more. Whereas Robert Bergstresser was owner of Vesuvius Incorporated, Lehigh Travel Plaza for 40 years, and owner of White's Travel Center for 12 years, and owner of several other businesses throughout his lifetime. Whereas Robert Bergstresser, through his numerous enterprises in 2022, employed both directly and indirectly over 700 people. And whereas Robert Bergstresser will be greatly missed by all those lives he has touched, especially current and former employees, former board members, and those that he had mentored. And whereas the citizens of Rockbridge County will recap the benefits of his capable, steady leadership and his dedication to the business and those in his employ and selfless contributions to the county for many years to come. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors respectfully honors the life and memory of a fellow citizen and express their sincere sympathy and condolences to the entire Bergstresser family during this time of great personal loss. Be it further proclaimed that we express on behalf of the citizens of Rockbridge County deep appreciation and gratitude for the gifts of time, ability, and commitment given by Robert Bobby J. Bergstresser to the county of Rockbridge and its citizens. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we adopt this proclamation.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Supervisor Day,
Yes.
Supervisor Lewis,
Aye.
Supervisor Ayers,
Yes.
Supervisor Lyons,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes as well. We have Ms. Bergstresser here.
A family member here.
Next, we have a resolution for National EMS Week. Supervisor Lyons.
Yes, a proclamation expressing the appreciation of the Board of Supervisors of Rockbridge County to local emergency medical service agencies and providers. Whereas the Congress and the President of the United States has designated May 15th through 21st as National Emergency Medical Services Week. And whereas the men and women of the emergency agencies serving Rockbridge County, the city of Lexington, and the city of Buena Vista provide a vital public service by responding to the EMS needs of our residents and visitors. And whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their local EMS providers. And whereas safety of our citizens is a primary goal of local, state, and national government. And whereas EMS providers are often among the first to arrive upon the scene of emergencies and disasters, be they medical, natural, or man-made, to provide immediate and often life-saving assistance while fulfilling their mission to provide the best pre-hospital care. And whereas EMS providers participate in numerous hours of rigorous training and continuing education in order to enhance their life-saving skills and thereby dramatically improve the survival and recovery rate of their patients. And whereas EMS providers and agencies demonstrate a high level of commitment and dedication to their communities and fellow citizens by providing training, health screenings, continued extra precautions towards COVID-19 responses that ensure the safety of crew members and patients, and other life safety awareness programs in their respective localities. Now, therefore, we, the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors, call upon all citizens of Rockbridge County to observe the week of May 15th through the 21st, 2022, as Emergency Medical Services Week, during which all our residents may join in celebrating the dedication of our local EMS providers, past and present, and their families whose support allows them to serve our community. Adopted this 9th day of May, 2022. Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Supervisor Lyons,
Yes.
Supervisor Ayers,
Yes.
Supervisor Day,
Yes.
Supervisor Lewis,
Aye.
and Chair votes yes as well. Next, we have citizen comments. Is there anyone signed up to address the board?
Yes, sir. First on the list is Gail Hessop.
Please, when you step to the podium, please state your name and magisterial district and
Hi, I'm Gail Haslop. I'm from Fairfield, South River District. I am a member of the Board of Trustees for the Rockbridge Regional Library. I'd like to thank the board for their support of the library and its programs and budget in past years. And I'm here this evening to ask for further support in opening a branch library in Fairfield. We have a facility in mind at 33 Red Hill Road. It's the former doctor's office. We have talked with the present owner, who is very willing to enter into a long-term lease. He's made improvements to the building, which are very nice. It's a small building, but will, serve for a branch. It's got a great location, great parking, handicapped accessible. Right now, the library has received unrestricted donation that we really don't need financial aid at this point to start the library up. But we do need your support on the long term in adding another branch to the system. Fairfield has spotty internet service at best. Libraries aren't just books anymore. There's internet. Our IT guy has already come up with all these ideas to have internet outside so that it could be used 24/7. There's enough space that we can have a meeting area. We have no public space in Fairfield for organizations to meet. So it's just a win-win for Fairfield if we could get a branch there. There's a lot of other branches in other communities around, through the county and in Bath. Fairfield's slightly underserved in this area, so would appreciate your support in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hassel.
Is she speaking on behalf of herself, Susan, or on behalf of the board?
Ms. Hassel, you were speaking on behalf of the board, correct? Or you're,
Yes, and the community.
Next speaker is Mr. Stephen Hart.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hart from Cars Creek, but I'm here tonight on behalf of the Rockbridge County Farm Bureau Board of Directors. Several months ago, we sent to the Board of Supervisors a letter recommending that the county establish a standard procedure for the approval of commercial utility scale solar plants within our agricultural districts. And with the fifth one of these proposals up before the county at this time, I'm here to reiterate the position of the Farm Bureau is that we should come up with a standard plan. When we've done this 5 times so far, and with probably more of them being done in the future, it should not be done as a one each. It should not be done as a special exception. There should be a single clear standard that landowners, developers, projects, everybody involved with this understands so that we're able to proceed forward of this. Many of the counties in our area have done this so that if we were to do this, we would not be doing it on our own. We could leverage the experiences of, for example, Rockingham County and some of the lessons that they have learned in adopting ordinances that would support similar proposals here within our own county. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Hart. Is there anyone else signed up?
That's everyone physically signed up.
Is there anyone present that wishes to address the board? All right. Is there anyone online wishing to address the board?
We have 2 attendees. If you would like to make a citizen comment, now is the appropriate time to use the raise hand button on the lower left-hand corner of your screen. Not seeing any hands raised.
Was there any written comments to the board?
No, sir. There were no written comments that I know of to the board. No, sir.
All right. I believe you have the April 25th regular board meeting minutes and the April 26th budget public hearing minutes. So everyone had a chance to review those. Any questions, comments, concerns? Is there a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
I apologize. You have the April 25th regular board meeting minutes. The April 26th and May 3rd budget meeting minutes will be added to the May 23rd agenda for adoption. At this time, we just need a motion for the April 25th regular work session and regular meeting minutes. So moved. Mr. Lewis, you still seconding that?
I do.
All right. Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Chris, who are the attendees? We have the benefit of being able to see who's in our room here, but I can't quite see who's online.
I have that. Would you like me to? Oh, I think I just had
Usually
that.
so on the right hand side. And your names usually show up.
That's what I thought, but yeah, I'm just not seeing.
There's a
Maybe
tab
it's
at
just
the top.
us.
of the
Uh-oh.
column. See that tab at the top of the column?
Yes, it is here. Attendees are, looks like a Mr. Kent Gibson and Martha Hughes.
Thank you.
Next, we have the consideration of county financial package. Has everybody had a chance to review? Is there any questions, comments, concerns about the financial package? Is there a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes as well.
Where's Ashley?
Next, we have a resolution welcoming,
There he is.
before we go to that, Ashton, we just approved the financial package. Is there anything you need to make the board aware of? Good timing. All right, we have a resolution welcoming refugees from Russian-Ukrainian war. Ms. Ayers?
Yes. Whereas on February 24th, 2022, the Russian Federation invaded Ukraine. And whereas the Ukrainian people have bravely and resolutely defended their sovereign nation, and whereas the Russian invasion has decimated a large portion of eastern Ukraine, rendering previously thriving cities and towns virtually uninhabitable. And whereas the United Nations estimates nearly 20% of the Ukrainian population, roughly 7.7 million people, have been internally displaced. And whereas the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund estimates over half of all Ukrainian children have been forced to leave their homes and over a quarter have left the country. And whereas the war is already the largest refugee crisis since World War II, with United Nations High Commission for Human Rights estimating that over 5.3 million refugees have left the country. And whereas in solidarity with the European Union, who has opened its borders to all Ukrainian refugees, the United States of America has opened its borders to 100,000 sponsored refugees. And whereas over 90% of these refugees are women and children. And whereas residents of Rockbridge County, the city of Lexington, the city of Buena Vista have joined together to provide support and refuge for a number of displaced Ukrainian families. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors, does hereby strongly support and encourage the efforts of citizens in our collective communities to provide refuge and comfort to Ukrainian families displaced as a result of the Russian invasion. Adopted this 9th day of May, 2022.
Sir, motion to approve the resolution as presented?
So moved. Second.
All right. Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes as well. Next, we have discussion on barking dog ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, at the board's April 11th meeting, Supervisor Lyons requested that a draft ordinance be added to this meeting agenda for discussion. A copy of that ordinance has been previously distributed and has been included on your agenda. This was initiated when Supervisor Lyons, then chairman, had received a number of complaints from citizens regarding their neighbors barking dogs. He formed a working group to explore options to address the problem. The group included the sheriff, the county administrator, the county attorney, and the zoning administrator. It resulted in this draft ordinance, which pretty much tracks previous versions of ordinances to address noise and/or noise from barking dogs. The significant difference is in relation to enforcement, with the ability of a citizen to pursue a summons through the magistrate in the event that 3 instances of barking dogs and a notice by that citizen has not resulted in correction of the problem. So the penalties include a class 4 misdemeanor. That is up to a $250 fine for a first offense. A second offense is in any single 12-month period is up to a $500 fine for a class 3 misdemeanor, and then a third or subsequent offense in the same 12-month period constitutes a class 2 misdemeanor, and that involves up to 6 months in jail and a fine of not more than $1,000, either or both. I think that covers the pertinent provisions, unless Dr. Lyons would like to add anything further.
Well, I first like to say that it is a draft and there are some things that probably need to be added. But it's getting to be that time of year where people like to be able to go to bed at night and sleep with the windows open and start and enjoy outdoor activities. This isn't meant for an occasional dog that barks or a working dog out guarding the animals at night. This is for, and it's not for people that have moved here and moved into an agricultural area and now all of a sudden are complaining about their neighbors. The complaints I've got are from people that have been here for way over 30 years. It usually involves someone moving in relatively close to them. Sometimes it involves multiple dogs. Sometimes it involves a single dog. And most of the time, it's been able to be resolved by conversations between the parties. However, especially during the last year, I don't know whether it was because people were home more because of COVID, that it's not being resolved, and the people are calling the sheriff's department, and the sheriff's department sending the animal control, and animal control is saying, well, we can't do anything. They're not breaking any ordinances or laws, and call your supervisor. So I have been getting several calls. I think it's time that we look seriously at enacting an ordinance and making sure that we word it so that we're not, punishing the farmer who has working dogs out working the fields at night, protecting the animals. I think the draft is a good start, and I'd like to hear what other supervisors have to say, so that if they're calling me from your district, I can refer them to you.
Chair,
Yes.
my first thoughts are an ordinance like this is I hope that it doesn't come back to bite us. But really the question is, can this be made a civil penalty rather than a criminal penalty?
I think it could be. Yes, sir.
Well, there's already a civil process to handle it. From my understanding, I mean, if you're being offended somehow, you can go to the magistrate now and, have a warrant sworn out for noise.
But
Right.
if you have a written ordinance that pertains to that spells out a civil penalty, wouldn't that give the presiding judge or whoever more teeth, or the law more teeth?
Maybe, but
I don't, I just,
It is do we have a noise ordinance correct now? I thought we had worked on that and could not come up
Pertains
with one.
basically
Well, we
to
have a noise
amplified
ordinance,
music.
but regardless of the noise, a
But
civil,
it's a very specific noise ordinance. It doesn't cover dogs. It doesn't cover parties. It doesn't cover, we've been through that before where,
and that's my other,
Yeah.
we just went through this last year and.
well, no, but in this particular thing, it doesn't cover that particular thing. So we can't just go out and
My-
get a civil, it won't quite work because we don't have an ordinance that covers that. That was all I was saying.
All right, my statement was currently you can, if you are offended for whatever reason it is, including noise, you can go to the magistrate and get a warrant for you being impeded upon. Is that not true?
You
Is that
can file a civil complaint,
Okay.
which would be directly with circuit court because of filing for an injunction, whether
So it
temporary or
Leaves the
permanent.
magistrate.
or
My
both.
apologies. I thought it went to the
That's-
magistrate.
yeah.
Goes directly to the court. So that process exists.
That's correct.
Thank you.
All right, so, and the court, so just go through that a little more for me. I'm sorry, I'm trying to, so do you think that that's equal to this? What would the court say?
If it's particularly onerous or the plaintiff can prove the degree of nuisance, it's a private nuisance action is what it would be called. And if the complainant can prove their case that they're infringing on the rights of the property owner in the quiet enjoyment of their property, and it's happening not on an isolated basis, but on a regular basis, they could very likely get an injunction, and whether or not they could recover damages would depend upon what kind of damages they can show as a result of the alleged actions. It is completely private. It would be one property owner filing a complaint against their neighbor who was creating the disturbance, the owner of the dogs, or that could be done in the private party situation as well. But it is entirely private. To get back to your question, if they do that, they are on their own, they get their own attorney, they file their own case. The preference, I think, for property owners is to be able to seek out the assistance of law enforcement or county staff to solve the problem, rather than having to pursue it themselves.
And that's what this draft talks about, right? It wouldn't be calling your supervisor, it wouldn't be calling the sheriff's department, it would be one citizen going directly to the magistrate to file necessary paperwork against another citizen for their dog barking, correct?
Yes, sir.
Does it?
Now, I would anticipate that if someone had a complaint, they would still call the sheriff's office. But the sheriff's office could then provide them with a copy of the ordinance and some information on how to proceed. It's not something people necessarily know, and they typically don't go look at county code. But with some feedback from law enforcement, they could then follow the steps.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily saying that you shouldn't contact your supervisor, you shouldn't contact the sheriff, but it takes the decision-making off of those two bodies. It's between one neighbor and another, as to settle it to the magistrate, correct?
That's correct.
Is there anything in here about, I didn't see it, but I mean, should it not be, somehow neighbors just talking with the neighbor, I mean, is there any correspondence there? If there's an issue or a problem, try to talk it out before you,
Well, they have to contact the neighbor.
It does say that. It does not clarify in this, if we're going about this one, it does not say that you do every time. So it's unclear whether or not somebody has actually, every time it has happened, saying, look, your dog is really bothering me. I need you to take care of this. And showed you see what I mean? It just says someplace, can you point us to that?
It's at the end of subparagraph B, where it states that before proceeding to the penalty phase, the citizen must first provide a written notice to the owner or custodian of the dog that's creating the noise.
Is the penalty, for me, it should happen, that should be the first step. Is that what you mean before the penalty stage?
Well, this provides that it must happen on at least 3 separate occasions before a property owner can proceed to begin with.
Mhm. And you must notify your neighbor on all 3 of those.
Not as it's written.
Right,
As
okay.
it's written, it provides written notice to the owner before going any further than that.
Yes. So for me, that would.
So you could provide written notice each time it happens, or you could provide one written notice saying, on this date, your dog's barked for 5 hours. On this date, your dog barked for a half hour. On this date, your dog's barked for 10 hours. And once you've given that written notice, then that's evidence that you've made the effort to contact the offender. Then you can go get your summons.
and is it in the draft here? I know it's three separate occasions, but what's the time frame for that? Is it 3 within a week, within a month? Is it the life, 10 years of a dog? I mean, what's 3
It
separate
doesn't,
occasions?
I don't have anything specifying those first 3 times, but the violations are all within one 12-month period.
And a single dog. So it couldn't be if you had 3 dogs, 1 dog, 2 dogs, 3 dogs.
Well,
Sorry.
I don't think it's going to pertain to it. If the bear hunter's got 6 dogs out there and you hear them barking, does it make any difference whether it's Joe, Mutt, or Jeff that you hear barking, or is it just their dogs?
It does at the end when they seize the dog. It matters.
And then there's one in here where you can have it, but we want to run it out of our county and put this animal in somebody else's county to have their problem. We're running our problem out to somebody else's county.
Well, we might need to adjust that.
That one, but I know with the noise ordinance, we got into the decibel and measuring the noise, the decibel. And of course, here we're talking about 50 feet. So how are you going to prove that this noise is coming from this dog over here and not the neighbor's dog to that dog? I don't know.
I will say that the examples that I've had in my district are torturous for the people. I mean, it's like they can't live near that. It's just so overwhelmingly loud and intrusive. So there are those cases. And I think what we're trying to do is get at those very teeny, a few of those cases that have made life miserable for people in our districts. this, I worry, kind of pits people that really kind of going after making people's lives miserable because they happen to have a dog, or they don't want a dog outside, or they don't want a dog in a doghouse. So I am absolutely, I guess what I would say about this is, given the problems that I've had in my district with dogs and people that have been so rude, been treated so rudely by the owners of these dogs that have no consideration. I wish there were something that we can do for them. I'm not sure if this is it. Certainly willing to spend some time, thinking about these issues and if this could be amended. There are several things, like you mentioned, having the dogs leave our county, or that they would be perhaps destroyed because they barked. I'm not even sure that's legal. I mean, can you make somebody give up their dog to be destroyed because it barks? Can you?
It's a pretty standard provision in these types of ordinances when it's deemed a nuisance, a public nuisance, in fact, and the owner of the dog fails after 6 times to address the issue. The idea is that law enforcement would have the opportunity to seize the dog much in the same character as other types of problems with a dog, like one that's consistently running at large, or one that has bitten, like a dangerous dog.
But our SPCA, when they seize dogs, or dogs come into their facility, they don't automatically put them down. Those dogs are evaluated, and then they're often put into homes that can make sure that they don't bark, or they don't do whatever they do, get out into their neighbors' gardens. I don't know, but that would make me feel a lot better if we just left it at the Humane Society would collect the dogs, and then they would do what is appropriate with that dog. So all of those things could be where you're making a face.
I'm not sure how we can delegate to a private nonprofit organization that they would take control of someone's dog. The only way that we, the county or the sheriff's department, would have authority is to seize the dog and place it within the pound.
Right.
And it would have to be handled under pound rules, not
That's what I'm
SPCA
saying.
rules.
Oh, okay, the pound. Then I'm confused about.
It's the same entity operating them, but they have different rules. So it would have to be the county pound rules that apply.
Okay.
Wouldn't the case be easier for the plaintiff to prove if it was a civil than criminal?
It's a lower burden of proof. Yeah. Under the civil enforcement, there would not be issuance of a warrant or anything before a magistrate, though. It would just be the law enforcement would have to write up a civil penalty and have it proceed under that. Who else would write up a civil penalty?
I think the landowner would go to the attorney and file suit against the owner of the dog and take it to civil court.
But they have that option already.
That's what I was saying at the beginning. Yeah.
So they have that option now.
They have that option now.
So why do we need to move with this?
Well, I think they have an option, but it's not an easy option. They're asking for help from us. And
Well, it takes the burden and work off the law enforcement side
Well,
That's the way
the
that I
same
think.
thing. That's why when we drew it up, they have to go to the magistrate and it takes the sheriff and his deputies out of the picture. But that was the concern. We didn't have enough deputies. You can't send
Well-
deputies out to sit and listen to barking dogs.
Isn't the deputy gonna have to serve the summons?
Not,
If they go to the magistrate and get the summons,
yes,
Okay.
but they would have to pay the fee for the deputy to go serve the summons. That was discussed. Yes, sir.
And how are we, or how does the citizen provide proof of the continuous noise?
I guess they could provide it a number of ways. They can keep a journal, they can record, they can. It's just like.
I guess I'm just asking, how do you? And I understand that you're trying to help the few cases where it's really bad. I get that. But what about the person who just walks outside, hears a dog barking and says, I don't like that. I will go and, I want them to keep their dog inside. I mean, how do you limit the vengeful person who just hates dogs?
I think there's
That's
one that got
exactly-
documented, they had at least 3 occasions that they've sent the letter. Then they have to swear before the magistrate, what they're presenting is true. And then they have the opportunity before the judge. Just like anything else.
I'm not, I could go many ways on this, but I mean, I think it needs to be some sort of documented proof, whether it's video or whatever, it's something that is just not a vengeful person, against.
And again, this isn't end all. This is a
Mhm.
start of a working document, but I think it's time that we address it.
The other thing is, the seizure of the dog. You go out and take somebody's dog, there's probably going to be issues, especially if it's a hunter's dog that they put 10, 20, $30,000 in. And again, I don't know that it's necessarily the dog's fault. I mean, it's the owner of the dog who is not controlling the dog. So I don't know about seizure of the dog versus maybe instituting heftier financial penalties against the owner. Sometimes if you institute enough of a financial penalty against the owner, they'll take care of the dog themselves. So, leave that burden on them versus, I don't know that it shouldn't be in there. I'm just throwing that out. I consider myself to be a dog person. I enjoy dogs and I've never had an issue. I did receive a call today about this, and the person who called, I respect a great deal, and I know they've raised dogs, they've bred dogs, and they talk to me about, they have a neighbor who has 2 dogs that just constantly bark, and it's all through the night. So to hear that from this particular person provided me a different line of sight when it comes to something like this. I'm still not sure if what we have here is, like you said, is a draft.
Right.
Is it?
Start.
Yeah. We can't, obviously, being the first time we've looked at it, we can't vote or anything like that. And I'm not sure with it being a draft and having the number of questions that we've had, that it's even something to go to a public hearing at this point. What I maybe would suggest with legal counsel is that over the next month, we all voice our concerns back to Supervisor Lyons, and he continues to work through this process, and at an appropriate time, it comes back before the board. Would that seem reasonable, or?
Yes, sir. That would,
I mean, is that reasonable to the board, or is it, I mean, I guess you have the choice of you either try to work through the process or you set it for public hearing with what you have in front of you, or you
Well, I don't think we're asking.
stop it right now.
We're
I mean,
asking for public hearing. Yeah, I think we need to work through the process and get everyone's input.
I'm just thinking of the options that you have before you tonight.
And
Either
I'm saying
continue,
if people don't think we need an ordinance, and that's an input.
Make a couple comments, please. I've been waiting on this. I didn't know if the agenda was gonna come up today. That's why I didn't sign up. I signed up and just make a couple comments and give you something to think about.
we're not taking any type of action tonight.
No, I'm just gonna make it, I mean, there's.
So what you can do is you can either you can email, you can write, you can come back to a future meeting during public comment period, anything like that to make comments.
Where's that posted at?
Mr. Slayton right here will give you the information as far as where you can send the information, your comments and your feelings and your concerns into, okay?
Are y'all gonna have an open hearing about all the public, for the public to come to this?
If we get to that point, we're not sure that we'll even get to
Chris,
that
why
point.
don't you get her, ma'am, can we get her name? And yeah, okay. I thought she was leaving. I wanted to make sure we, no, we would like to get your name. I would like to get your name.
Ma'am,
He knows.
hey, ma'am, it appears from other board members, they'd like to hear your comments. So
Yeah,
if you'll step
okay.
forward, you got 3 minutes. If you
Okay.
state your name, Metro District, and give your comments
I'm
real
Brenda
quick.
Heartless. I live in Carter's Creek District. I own beagles. There's deer that comes out. My dogs bark at the deer. Are we supposed to kill all the deer legally now so they won't bark? I have a neighbor that works in the middle of the night on a junkyard. So a lot of things going in and out. So my dogs bark. So how am I supposed to control what goes on in my neighborhood? For them to call the law on me, it doesn't make any sense. I have a stepson, has 15 bear dogs. I have friends on top of friends have bear dogs. How's this gonna happen? Does everybody just want to sell, let everybody else just move out of the county? My dogs won't be taken. I mean, that's all I got to say. Yeah, I don't know better about it. Ever come try to take my dogs. They're
Thank you,
like
Ms. Hart.
kids to me. You got my info. That's right.
Thank you, ma'am.
So what I would recommend to the board is that between now and our first June meeting, that you provide your input and your comments to Supervisor Lyons, and he'll bring back the information to us at that point in time. Is that okay with everybody? That gives you a month. And if it's deemed that there's no need for this, yeah, that's what you'll report back. Okay. Okay, so we have a couple of appointments. We still have the RARO Board of Directors, an unexpired term of Mr. Henney. As far as I know, we're still looking for an applicant for that. We have the Planning Commission with Kimberly Hines, term expires May 11th, 2022. Are there any applicants for that? Or anybody working
Not
on
yet.
that?
We are
Working
working
on
on
that?
that.
All right, next we have purchasing agent. The board had previously named Director of Fiscal Services, Steve Bolster, as the county's purchasing agent. Do you have comments about this, Ms. Huffman, or should I proceed?
It's up to you. This is under code and county policy for the board to designate the county purchasing agent.
And as I mentioned, the board had originally named Steve Bolster. Obviously, Mr. Bolster has left the county, so he's no longer in that agent status. Since that time, Amy Milliner has taken the required courses and exams at the state level and was promoted to the position of procurement coordinator. I believe that Mr. Suter and Mr. Harrison provided the recommendation to the board that she be considered for the to be named the official procurement agent of the county. Is there any discussion about having Ms. Milliner be the procurement agent for the county?
No, I like her recommendations. So I think that it makes sense for us to go forward.
Motion.
And that is a motion.
That's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
And chair votes yes as well. You have the monthly staff reports in front of you. Have you had a chance to review them? Any questions, comments, concerns about any of them? Is there a motion to approve as presented?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
and chair votes yes as well. Couple of board comments. We heard earlier a comment addressed to the entire board about the solar projects within the county. I spoke to Mr. Lyons, spoke to Mr. Sladen, and obviously, his office has been covered up with numerous projects and different things here the last couple months. I do remember at the last solar project that we discussed, it was talked about that we need to look about an ordinance and discuss it and see what we could come up with. We do have the ad hoc committee that is made up of myself and Mr. Lyons. If the board so pleases, that ad hoc committee could take this under review, work with the county administrator, county attorney, Mr. Sladen and his department to come up with, I guess, some guidelines that then we could provide the guidelines that the board would like to see or consider, provide that to the planning commission, and then they could come up with a recommendation as far as an ordinance to come back to the board. If the board so chooses, we could look at that route.
So in essence, the ad hoc committee would be all of us. We would be submitting our recommendations to
You would submit your input
input.
to either Mr. Lyons or myself, as we consist of the ad hoc committee.
Okay.
And then, we would come back to the full board with everything that has been input or advised or solicited from each member. And then, we could work around. I'm not sure that we necessarily should come up with an ordinance, but we could give guidelines and sort of guardrails to Mr. Sladen, and he could go back to the planning commission, and they could work on an ordinance to come back that institutes
I mean,
what the
that's
board
their
is
job.
looking for.
Right. So I guess what I'm saying is I feel very strongly about this, and I want to make sure I'd like to have input on this. And I just was seeing how that would work, and that's fine. So I will give that input to you all. And
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Sladen. I know that had been presented. Has the planning commission begun that process? Is there anything underway
No,
from the
well,
planning?
to answer it, I think it was August. Bear with me here. It was at the August 11th, 2021 meeting. The planning commission actually held a workshop talking about a solar ordinance. Included 15 different items that were discussed. Prior to that meeting, staff reached out to the representatives from the Rockbridge Area Conservation Council and members of the Farm Bureau, Rockbridge County Farm Bureau. Both of those organizations were in attendance. I reported it was a positive direction, and then I guess the caveat as the workload allows, staff will be developing a draft solar ordinance and follow up accordingly. And so essentially the workload and staff time has not allowed for any future, or I'm sorry, really any additional discussion. Staff has done a significant amount of research, and we are familiar with some other ordinances, solar ordinances up and down the Shenandoah Valley.
Mr. Chairman, that where I was going with that is I'm reticent to send too much down to the planning commission. As I've preached before, to me, that they are the planners. They are the ones who study those things and have that knowledge and experience. And I would prefer that the genesis come from the planning commission, to us. I certainly understand your desire to accomplish the goal is probably, some of what's driving you, but just from my preference, I'm leery of me telling the planning commission what to do.
And I agree that the planning commission should come back to the board with a draft ordinance. I think it's important that since we're going to be the ones to approve it, we at least have input up front and say that here's some things we'd like to be considered or input into the process so that they know when they're, I'd hate for them to come back to us and we say, well, cross this out, change this. We want to add that, if we can provide them the information up front, they can work on the ordinance and bring it back to us. Understanding we won't have all the answers.
Yeah, I understand it's got to start somewhere. I guess I prefer that it come from them.
And part of the discussion in August was to create a solar committee, and we're still very interested in doing that, which I reported then, I'll report again. What I don't want to have happen, what I think would be beneficial to that committee, beneficial to the board of supervisors, beneficial to staff, beneficial to everyone involved, is to have a working document going into this versus just a clear slate in a committee where we can get bogged down in some of the details. And it has been interesting to study other localities, including Rockingham County and some unique, what I would consider unique zoning techniques that have been implemented. That every single one of them has pros and cons, but I do think it would be beneficial to have some input from the supervisors on this level, essentially of what you're hearing from your constituents, what you would like to see, what you don't want to see, and essentially discuss the pros and cons on some of the zoning techniques that we have found in other localities pertaining to solar development, obviously. And it still will be, I will say, it's still, we haven't found, I don't think we found one locality that allows it by permitted use in an agricultural zone. So to be clear, it will be the same process as
So
we
by
have
special
now,
exception.
similar to other localities. It's still used by special exception in an agricultural zoning district. I don't think staff would never recommend getting to a point where it's a permitted use in an agricultural zoning district because you don't have that uniqueness per site. That's the uniqueness of the special exception permit. It pertains to that particular site, not in an agricultural general zoning district, 72% of the county type thing.
But
Agricultural zoning districts.
It sounds like there's some ways that other counties are doing that I think you use unique zoning. That do you think that would be worthwhile as in a work session to go over those with us before?
I think as individuals first, and then potentially as a work session. Yes, I think both of those would be beneficial to staff. Because I have ran across other localities that literally have had at least 3 to 4 ordinances proposed and none be approved. I think Greene County is the one that Greene County, Virginia was the one that I chatted with. And if I recall correctly, there were at minimum 3 different ordinances from various organizations, committees. One was from a law firm, one was from a private consultant firm. And when I last talked to the citizen that I spoke with in that county, none of the 3 were approved.
Well, were they submitted by the planning commission?
Yes, I mean, it went through the
Okay.
proper, some were solicited by the board of supervisors themselves, some were brought up by the planning commission. They also had a committee. And so there's obviously a whole lot of moving parts to a solar ordinance. And the other thing I'll say is there new moving parts of that. We're accustomed to a lot of different special exception permits, special exception applications in Rockbridge County, but we are not accustomed to a lot of solar permits at this time, obviously, because it's a relatively new concept in this part of the state. As far as the scale, community scale solar that we're getting the applications for.
Mhm.
So will this, or can this put a moratorium or a freeze on any actions by the board on solar farms until this is approved? I don't know how we can go forward with one. if we
Some
don't-
counties are doing that.
If we know it's in the making and we're not, what if we approve it and then later they don't adhere to, or we don't know what the ordinance will be? I don't know.
I would ask legal counsel.
I don't think there's any authority to place a moratorium on any development application, but we do currently have a special exception permit process, so nothing can be approved without going through that process. What we're talking about in terms of a solar ordinance is one that's drafted to apply to every single application. And that's separate and apart from still approving one of those projects through a special exception process to address specifics or items that are unique to the site or that particular project. So you have that now. There's nothing that you would require in a solar ordinance that you couldn't require now under a special exception permit. So it's not preventing you from regulating a new project until this ordinance is considered and perhaps adopted.
And so how soon can we get a committee together to start working on this? I mean, we suggested that we're going on 9 months.
I think my last statement to the follow-up email that I sent to y'all, the board members that I do after each planning commission, then after each planning commission meeting to y'all, and I'm somewhat thankful I put this in there, is as staff level and workload allows, and that just hasn't happened. I mean, as y'all know, we've had, an average of 4 to 6 public hearings a month. So again, to answer Supervisor Lyons' question directly, I think that depends on what we have coming down the pipeline and what staff level we have to deal with those immediate issues, applications that can't be put on hold, essentially.
Well, we're not short on funds. If we need to bring in temporary people, I think we need to bring in temporary people and take care of the solar and take care of the comprehensive plan, which is, high priority. And we're 5 months into the year, and when we don't have the people to do it, we need to dip into our reserves and start getting it done rather than, things aren't going to get any lighter, So if we have to wait till things get lighter so that we can get our staff to work on it, we could be back here next year kicking the same can.
For our comprehensive plan, is that possible to bring in a consultant to help with the process, to lighten your load?
Absolutely. And it's actually budgeted. It was budgeted last year and it's budgeted this year.
Okay.
Fairly nominal
How do
amount.
we start that process?
It would be a request for proposals, I assume. The Central Shenandoah Planning District Commission has helped out many localities in the past, and there's also private planning consultants that have done the same for sure.
Okay, so if we went down that route and then we could target solar early in the process, perhaps.
Well, I'm not saying that the comprehensive plan has to be updated prior to any additional ordinances at all adopted. So the focus could certainly be on an ordinance amendments, including solar, and then come back through. And you're definitely dealing with two different.
Right, but the plan is supposed to be directing everything, right? Isn't that what it's supposed to be our guidance, is our comprehensive plan?
That's correct, yes.
Right, so why don't we get that updated so we're kind of all on the same page and then start getting things should be fitting into the comprehensive plan rather than working on a solar ordinance and then afterwards try to make sure it fits the comprehensive plan.
I agree, but I don't know what my only statement to that is, I don't know what the comprehensive plan, I mean, I don't think the comprehensive plan and that depends on the individual meetings and your constituents, but I don't think we're going to get to a point where we're not going to allow this by special exception in an agricultural zone. Again, 72% of the county. It goes back to Ms. Huffman's statements of the ordinance itself would essentially dictate what information we would want. And then there again, there are some extra, I won't say extraordinary, but there are some unique zoning mechanisms out there that have been implemented solely pertaining to solar development. So they do definitely go hand in hand, but they're not, where it would not be required to have the comprehensive plan update prior to do a zoning ordinance amendment of any kind,
But
including solar.
certainly to get the ball rolling, hiring the consultant and moving that along is the way to go, especially it's in the budget, right?
That for the comprehensive plan,
Mhm.
yes, that was in the approved budget last year, and it's currently in the draft budget this year. We did not even start the comprehensive plan update last year due to the delay in the census counts coming out, because a lot of the census is a critical point of the comprehensive plan, obviously.
Perfect. Yes. Okay.
I'll, between now and the next meeting, I'll work with Mr. Slade and his department, the county attorney and county administrator to bring back more information to the board about that entire process. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wanted to make everyone aware, I'm assuming you've been receiving messages, but I believe starting on May the 14th, everyone within the 540 area code must enter the area code to dial a number. It's my understanding that once May 14th comes, if you don't enter the area code, your call will not be completed.
That's hard on my rotary dial phone. That's all we got.
Maybe you need to dip in your reserves. But just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that. And
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mr. Coffey's here with us. We sort of went over the reports. I didn't know.
Well, I was going to ask on my report or board
Okay, great.
report,
I just want if he had
yeah,
something to offer.
I'm not going to let him go out of here.
All right,
also, we received a letter from the attorney for St. Dunstan's Academy, and I'll let our legal counsel, Ms. Huffman, provide information on that.
St. Dunstan's attorney has indicated that he has objections to the fact that the board did not take action on the application that was heard at the last regular board meeting. So I had so what I'm suggesting to the board is that if acceptable, you schedule this matter on the next agenda, which would be the May 23rd meeting, in order to take official action on that application. The St. Dunstan's attorney does argue that you can just continue to make the same motion to approve over and over, and I disagree with that. But it would also be an opportunity for the board to consider an ordinance to deny, which would include the basis for taking that action. And I would have both options of an ordinance available for your consideration at that meeting.
So it would not, there would not be any new information provided about the request. It would just be the board taking action.
That's correct.
And
Other than what you all want to see or hear, if you have an interest in in some additional information. It's certainly within your prerogative to hear that, but I
Do
believe,
not have to have another public meeting.
no, ma'am.
Okay.
But not a public hearing, right here.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, there was a motion without a second, which ultimately means a denial. I mean, it wasn't approved. But what he's arguing is there should have been action taken, a motion for denial of the project. And your recommendation is that we come back next meeting and make that motion of denial if it's a second and if there's a vote.
I'm not going to tell you what action to take. I am,
Yeah.
but I know what happened last time. And I think I'm recommending that you take some action at the next meeting.
And
I was told that by taking no action, that they could come back within a year. Is that,
They can keep coming back, but I don't think that the rules allow the applicant to keep submitting the same application for a period of 12 months when you have to coordinate the zoning with the rules of procedure. So at the last meeting, the motion failed for lack of a second. There was no action to deny the application. So to that extent, they are correct. It is still active, but the board is not, it would be a violation of the board's rules to continue to make the same motion over and over and over for the next 12 months until they get what they want to hear.
so if we go back and deny the request, then they can come back 12 months later?
In 12 months, they can present the same or substantially similar application. If in the meantime, they come up with a significantly different application, and unlike Mr. Looney's position that they can just change a condition, that's not a substantially different application. But they could come back in 6 months with an application for a different location or a different property, or maybe only a portion of the property, or something significantly different from what they have presented so far. They can bring back sooner than the 12-month period.
And while I understand there is not a need for another public hearing, I think it's important for the board to be transparent to the citizens that were here for the public hearing as well. I don't want it to look like, a bait and switch that we, didn't take action while you was here. And then, we come back to another meeting and we take action that maybe is different than what it was when they were here. So I believe.
I'm sorry. You go ahead, Brenda. You're right.
I mean, I believe that we need a motion and a second to add it to the May 23rd agenda for consideration of a vote of action at that point in time.
Yes, sir. And if you take that action tonight, if you take that vote tonight, then Mr. Sladen and I will be working on making sure that the adjoiners get word that that's what is happening. So it is transparent.
Okay.
Transparent that we're going to make action, but we're not saying what we're doing with that
That's
action.
correct. If they want
Okay.
to be here, they'll have the option to be here. And spoken with Steve Milo a few times, and I'll give him a call as well.
So I would just add, we'll treat that notice the same. It will not be a notice of public hearing. Obviously, on the 25th, we open and close the public hearing. So this next one is not a bona fide, it is not a public hearing at all. But with that being said, we'll send it to the adjoining landowners. We'll send notice of the meeting to the adjoining landowners, the current landowners, the applicant, and the applicant's attorney. We'll make sure that gets done, and we'll do our best to get that out tomorrow. So, so they have ample notice.
So is there a motion to add this item to the May 23rd agenda?
I'll make the motion.
And
Do
is
we
there
have
a second?
Second.
All right, Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
and Chair votes yes as well. Is there any other board comments?
Well, I was going to give a report on RARO, but Mr. Coffey's here and I'll let him do it.
Thank you all. Take just a minute, but there has been a lot of happenings in RARO. I'd like to just give you guys a quick update. Currently, baseball and softball are in full swing, actually trending towards the end at this point. We're working towards all-stars. We've got right around 340 participants this spring. Baseball numbers are up, softball numbers are up. And as far as I can find back in records, softball numbers are as large as they've ever been. We've got 13 baseball teams and 10 softball teams. Hopefully we can continue to grow that next year. Our fall sports programs did begin registration today. This kind of, we'll still take registrations all the way into the fall, but we have a registration period in the spring where we'll get the bulk, and it kind of gives us an idea of numbers and what we're looking at when we get to August. So those football, cheerleading, soccer, fall programs began registration today. We do have some new programs that are being offered. One of the things that I mentioned probably the fall, early winter at this point was some adult programming starting. We have successfully ran a 4-week introduction to pickleball. It was too shy of max capacity. From there, we're now providing what we call open court play. It's not really keeping score, show up, play for those that want to do it. And it is nearing capacity as well. So we're going to continue to offer that as space and facilities allow. We're starting a adult co-ed softball league in conjunction working with Glasgow and the members of Glasgow Town Council. They've been running a small league the last several years, the possibility of growing it. So we've kind of taken that. We've got 7 teams for sure starting next week with the possibility of gaining a couple more in the next couple days. Also, in an effort, another adult program and offering to middle school and high school students out of season is grass volleyball this summer. A lot of our middle school, high school students travel to other areas, Roanoke, Salem, Charlottesville, to play volleyball. Obviously, the county high school volleyball program has been very successful, and part of that is due to that, those opportunities. So we're just trying to provide that opportunity locally, and the registration started for that today. I've gotten a lot of questions. Hopefully those questions turn into registration forms. We'll be announcing our summer development programs. In the past, it's been a lot camp form with different sports and programs. We're going to offer more development, like certain days of the week is devoted to the sport, and you can kind of get it over a stretch rather than 3 or 4 day window. So we're changing the dynamic of that a little bit and trying to provide some more particular skill development. There's a lot happening, a lot going on. Hopefully you all are hearing positive things. I do feel like growth is among us, and we're looking forward to seeing where that kind of takes us over the next year. So, thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb.
Thank you very much.
I got a couple questions. Is it okay, Mr. Chair? The All-Stars that I hear, we're doing All-Stars?
Yes.
Have we always done All-Stars?
We've done it with baseball. We
Yeah.
have done minors, so 10U and 12U we have done. But this year we sanctioned our 8Us. And so 8U, 10U, 12U in baseball. Our softball program is not sanctioned. Most of the other softball programs surrounding us are sanctioned. So for them to, we can't go play in their tournaments because we're not sanctioned, and for us to host an unsanctioned tournament, most of them won't come play. So that is something that we'll consider and look into next year, especially with our softball numbers growing, is to provide very similar, same opportunities to them as well. But yes, and then basketball was one that had not been done. We did back at the end of basketball season in February, we did do All-Stars for basketball, went to Augusta County, played and it was no travel teams, only rec team All-Star tournament, and fared very well. Our girls made it to the championship. All three of our boys teams made it to Sunday, which means they had won prior to get to that point. So that was something that had not been done. I use it kind of as a barometer to see where our kids are compared to other localities. So participation wise, our numbers are comparable, and competitively is comparable as well.
Excellent. And where's the pickleball happening?
It's been happening at Maury River on Wednesday nights, Maury River Middle School Wednesday evenings.
You in?
I've heard really good things. Lots of people
Yes,
thrilled about that.
very good things with
Very nice.
pickleball. We have placed 3 courts. We have put the lines down for 3 courts of pickleball at Rivermont. If it continues to grow as it is, we're probably going to expand our offerings off of 1 night a week to possibly 2 nights a week, with the idea of 1 night at Rivermont, 1 night at Maury River.
Is it outside at Rivermont?
It's inside at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, it's inside the gym. We've got 3 courts on the gym floor there, but at some point, the discussion would like to look at the discussion or options of being able to get some pickleball courts outside. The only ones, to my knowledge, in the county are at the Lexington Country Club. So that's not necessarily what I wanted to talk about, but with the growth of pickleball in this area,
Always
outdoor
ask questions.
pickleball courts somewhere in the county, I think would be a fantastic idea. It's definitely growing.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Does the board have any other comments, questions, concerns? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr.